Okay, well,
All right, and welcome to Mythical Monster Investigations. This is Archimage and my co-hosts.
Shadow Fox.
I'm done digging the rabbit hole, guys. Oh, hi, Zed here.
Wait, we
Well
were
done.
supposed to dig a rabbit hole?
I already did it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're good. Don't worry.
That is what you meant when you said we were jumping down another rabbit hole, right? We needed one?
Of course.
Okay.
We'll probably need several rabbit holes, to be honest. So start digging under the rabbit hole and then 3 more down, and we'll be halfway to the halfway point. It'll be fun.
Okay, if you wanted an ant colony, you should have asked for that instead of a rabbit hole.
Well,
I'll keep that in mind.
I mean,
God damn it. Where's the pickaxe?
Who was it?
The
Miner of Hackney. That was it. The guy who just kept digging, and he dug essentially a bunch of ant tunnels underneath his whole town, and caused the roads to fall in on themselves, and floors and buildings to fall in.
I mean, we might do that spiritually with this podcast, so let's go for it. Okay, with our obvious detour in logic, we would like to welcome you to the start of a very special series that we've been looking forward to for quite a while now, that being the subject of angels. To be fair, this is not going to be in the chronological order that we've been doing other mystical monster investigations, as this is a special presentation. So this will be episode 1 of the Angel podcast. Now,
hopefully not like 4 or 5 parts like the dragon one.
No, there'll probably be like 10 parts.
We're screwed.
There's a ton. That's why. Well, actually, now to say there's a lot to cover.
Where's my popcorn?
Is an understatement, as this series will cover several episodes and more than likely exceed our dragon's explorations. So, in order to prevent us and our listeners from getting overwhelmed, we're going to try to keep each episode approximately an hour long. Now, for this series, we are specifically going to be looking at angels. So while I will undoubtedly mention God and demons, they will not be the focus of this series. Now, as a disclaimer, I am a Christian, so clearly I do have a bias in this subject. That being stated, this series will cover not only scripture, but archaeology, mythology, and eyewitness accounts, both modern and historical, credible or otherwise. So I will do my best to present the facts in a fair and, as much as I can muster, unbiased opinion.
I'm just going to get my Bible out now. I'm going to fact check you.
And I'm the non-religious one of the group, so go ahead.
Okay, so according to the Bible, this is all. You shouldn't go further back than 6,000 years. So continue.
So in the year 7000 BC.
Oh god. Finally, if you're listening on Spotify, I highly recommend you watch this on YouTube, as several pictures will be used when discussing archaeological evidence.
Oh, I'll describe them. Don't worry.
I hate to mention this now, but anything else you two want to add?
I can't wait to describe the pictures. It's a rock. Just a rock. Look to be
Zed,
granted.
anything credible?
Remind me again why your job isn't being like a sportscaster or something.
So they kicked the ball. They kicked the ball again. Okay, now this guy in black and white is just yelling about something. Okay, they're kicking the ball again.
The sad thing is, we don't know what sport he's talking about.
Wait, this is baseball? Shit. Why are they kicking the ball then?
We have been talking for 5 minutes and we are already so...
Okay, with that rather long-winded introduction complete, let's get ready for our in-depth dive into the study of angelology. Go ahead and switch slides. Like everything else in this series, the best place to start with is the name. Now, most people in any way familiar with angels know that angel means messenger. Specifically, in early Hebrew, the word for angel was malach, meaning messenger or one who is sent. Big difference. In Greek, messenger is translated as angelos, in Latin, angelus, and Old English, angel. leading to our modern pronunciation of angel. Now, what does this term say about them? Like many things, we have to remember the context of the times. Messengers were not just people who delivered news, they were people trusted to deliver news. Now, this seems minor today, but before the advent of the information highway, kings, lords, and noblemen depended on these individuals to keep them informed. Um, to keep them informed, propose alliances, and alert them to potential dangers. So the person carrying this information had to be extremely trustworthy, as at the time it could genuinely be the difference between life and death. You don't even need to look that far back to see an example of this, particularly if you look at the First World War. And it was noted some messengers would deliberately destroy their messages to make sure it didn't get to the front lines in order to prevent, certain actions from being taken. Now, considering the rather disastrous tasks and tactics of the First World War, that was not necessarily a bad thing. But the point is the importance of trust to messengers. And when you consider the amount of leaked photos out there, trusting our messages may be a practice many should consider taking up again. Regardless, what should be taken away is that these beings were not just messengers, but those trusted to carry out God's will. These messengers are messengers because they have God's trust. Perhaps this is why fallen angels are denoted as demons, symbolizing the trust they have lost. What do you guys think?
Well, not all messengers are trusted. There's been quite a few, at least mythos of messengers. People, whenever a king or someone did not like someone, they would send them with a bad message to their death, essentially.
I mean, yeah, that's true, but that's more of a execution thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but they all being sent as messengers, and the person delivering the message don't know it.
Yeah, but it was still a trust thing. Like, famously, don't shoot the messenger because Genghis Khan would send messengers, and if they killed him, that meant that he was going to kill all of them.
Oh yeah.
So more often than not, messengers were usually, again, the point is trustworthiness. These are God's messengers, so they are specifically meant to be trusted with God's message. The message of the all-important Most High, basically. So, like, it's saying that these are God's most trusted is basically what messenger says. I mean, that's how I kind of interpret it. Zed, what about you?
No, that sounds about right.
I mean, especially back then, you wouldn't trust your messages to someone like you didn't trust.
I mean,
Yeah.
if I didn't like someone, I would say, yeah, deliver this message to this king for me. And then in the message, I'll be like, kill this guy. I totally hate him.
Okay, this is why God didn't make you a king.
Yeah, because things would got done.
God, you'd be charged with so many war crimes.
I mean, I'm pretty sure in medieval time, that's what they did to a lot of their messengers that they didn't want
Should
killed
I just
directly.
start drafting up the next part of the Geneva Conventions?
Probably. I mean, to be fair, Shadow Arfox would probably get along very well with the tactics of the Borgias.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They took control of the Pope of the Papal States, if I recall correctly.
The papacy.
Yes.
They let's see. At one time, almost had all of Rome under their control. Let's see. If I'm going off of Assassin's Creed, they had a magical, mystical item that could control the hearts and minds of people.
Yeah, they also all died to one man.
Yeah, but I get to meet Ezio, so that's a plus.
It surprises me. It shouldn't surprise me, but your entire knowledge of Italian history is related to a video game.
Hey, you got admit for a video game that was pretty actually historically accurate. They did take over Rome. I know what's his name, the main Borgia did mysteriously
Cesare?
die. I think so. He died mysteriously during the siege.
Wait, Cesare or Juan Borgia?
No, it's Cesare, I believe I'm thinking of.
Yeah, okay.
The one who
Well,
I think
I will give credit. The game is fairly
the one who they
historically accurate.
who historian think he was screwing his sister.
Yeah, that's
That's
Cesare.
Cesare.
Yeah, Cesare. Yeah, he did. I mean, the game did get it right. He did mysteriously die during the siege.
Yeah.
Most people assume that he just died due to like artillery or stray arrow or something like that. He may have been screwing his sister. Did have control of the Papal States. Did take control of Rome. Had connection to the Pope. I mean, the game got a lot of the big broad strokes right.
No, that's true. I give credit. Where were we going with this? Right. Okay,
Messengers of
so
God.
back on track. While their name may mean messenger, they are capable of far more than just passing along messages. Next slide. Which will not surprise anyone with even a rudimentary understanding of angels. Though it brings up the question, how powerful are angels? Are these celestial beings omnipotent, or do they have limitations? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what exactly are they? Well, for now, let's start with abilities. Exactly what powers does the Bible claim angels possess? When you read through and piece together the information, you find that angels are capable of obviously delivering message, showing messages in dreams, preaching the word of God, giving God's law to the people, and they can also be sent to destroy. They're almighty. I mean, not almighty. They're mighty and they're abnormally strong. They're capable of flight, creating clouds and producing wind, can summon fire, pillars of fire and smoke. They can turn invisible and appear anywhere. They're wise and they're knowing all the earth. They can instantly kill humans and have been known to kill thousands in a single night. They have power over animals. They can cause chains to fall free and they can open locks. They can make and carry food. They are capable of strengthening, healing, and giving words for humans to speak. They can cause earthquakes. They can transform. They're capable of speaking every single tongue. They can be as loud as a lion's roar, and they can make humans dumb and later restore their voice. That's dumb as in mute, not dumb as in idiotic. So that's just some of the capabilities of angels, or at least that's the capabilities what specifically the Bible says they have. Now, this is the canon of Bible, not some of the more uncanon things like the Book of Enoch and other things, which we'll touch on later. Now, much like comic book heroes, angels have duties and responsibilities, which include but are not limited to, you beat me to it, thank you, watching over or keep a person or persons protected, protect those who fear the Lord, do the Lord's will and hearken to his word. They are servants of the Lord to gather the elected. They are sent to keep us on the right path or bring us to a particular place. They are meant to protect. They are, of course, messengers. They carry the dead to heaven, but not all the dead. They discern good and bad. They're given charges, gather that which offends, and do iniquity, and they sever those who are wicked. So that's quite a bit. Now, what do these responsibilities imply? Rules, limitations, things they can and cannot do, which I don't know about you, I find interesting. Now, no, you're right. That is correct. Sorry, I lost my place.
Sorry.
Things they cannot do. No.
You're keying me
No,
off
you're
with the title. Sorry.
yeah, you got key off the title. Well done. This is further emphasized in the Bible with various claims, but none, in my opinion, more prominent than 1 Corinthians 6:3, which says, "Do you not know that we will judge the angels? How much more the things of this life?" Which, well, if angels are judged, then they have consequences for their actions, meaning they cannot just do anything they desire. They have laws and they have punishment for breaking them. However, this doesn't necessarily mean angels cannot do something, but more they are forbidden to do so. Yet there are other verses in the Bible that does highly suggest certain limitations on angelic beings. The most prominent being that of Matthew 24:36, that angels do not know all, or as it is, but about the day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Now, this specifically is stating the end times, the day Revelation, the final book of the Bible, is supposed to take place. It's made very clear that the angels do not know when this time happens. Only God knows this. So the angels are not trusted with everything. That's basically what that's going with. And so I find that kind of interesting. While the angels are most trusted, it does show that God keeps some things close to his chest. And I've always wondered, and here's a question for you guys. Do you think that God keeps the state close and away from the angels just because he doesn't want them blabbing or doesn't completely trust anyone with this information? Or do you think the actual time may depend on us and how we act on this earth?
So I
Uh,
mean, it depends. So I guess for me at least, it depends on how much you're gonna start bothering for because we haven't got to or we haven't taken to the part of Noah and the flooding of the earth, because I think it's more the book of Enoch, which give rise to. I know Bible Genesis is, earth was flooded because of wicked human. Enoch, I believe, also adds to it and say that there was also fallen angels.
well, actually, the Bible
Well,
does look into that too, and we're going to get into that
I
in a
I
minute.
think the Bible mentioned like one line.
Yeah, which we will cover
Yes.
because there's a lot in that one line.
But yeah,
In fact,
there
the
is a
entire
lot.
book of Enoch's because of it.
Yes, and so it's like, so in some regard, well, we do, even without that line, we do know that angels are capable of fallacy, because some sided with Lucifer,
That's true.
and surprisingly enough, none of them. I don't think they ever directly name an angel that sided with Lucifer,
No,
which I always found weird. They only ever
that's
name
actually something
Lucifer.
else we're going to cover.
Okay, well then I'm just psychic. So I guess my thing is, we've already know that the angels can fail, and they are capable of flaw. They are made to be servants to God and messengers.
True.
You wouldn't trust a messenger nor a servant to know everything, because that would be a bad move, especially if it's something in terms of military. And I see the end of days as something military, because that's God's last confrontation with Lucifer, essentially.
Yeah.
That, I mean, at that point, it's supposed to be all chips on the table at that point. That's
Oh yeah, those are
something.
that's the end game.
So that would be something like you wouldn't want to tell even your servants, even your most trust, especially a servant who served as a messenger, because that could get very messy very quickly if that messenger ever fall or betray you.
Very true. Yep, and actually that actually comes up to the point. Considering God is known as an all-knowing being, so to have the angels not knowing everything demonstrates also a very clear distinction in importance. However, uh, there is probably no story that highlights both the limitations and differences between angels and God than this story. And this story is Genesis 6 1 through 4. Now, this is better known as the fall of the Watchers, as told in the Bible, and this would be it. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair and beautiful. And they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive in man, for that he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in those days, and who after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And this phrase, this verse, is better known as the fall of the Watchers, which was, and this is actually the only time this is mentioned in the Bible. When this story is referenced later on in this lecture, I'm going to be typically referring to the book of Enoch, which we will look into greater detail later on in this series. Now, while short, this passage does give us quite a bit of information on angels. For instance, if angels can disobey God, then logic dictates that angels must possess some form of free will, even if the extent of that free will is probably debatable. I mean, if you, let's face it, that's the point of free will. If you're going to have free will, you have to be able to choose to do the right thing and the wrong thing. If you can only do the right thing, do you actually have free will? That's not a statement, I'm asking.
I'd say no.
I mean, right? You have to be able to choose to do wrong to really say you can have free will, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get into some philosophical.
No, we're going. This will be philosophical. Turn on your brains. This is going to be interesting. This is philosophical, spiritual, all the things. We can't do this
Because
about angels without doing this.
in the age-old debate, if someone do know everything, then they know what choice you're gonna make, which means free will is always an illusion because the outcome is always predetermined because someone know what your outcome is going to be regardless of the choice.
True, but that's God's will, which we can touch on later on. But I'm talking specifically about free will. If angels can disobey God, then they must have some ability to have. They must have some extent of free will, right?
Yes, and I believe technically the Genesis, the earlier book chapters of Genesis with the Garden of Eden kind of hints this with Adam and Eve eating the fruit of knowledge. They
Right.
I think God said we can't let them eat from the tree of life, otherwise they'll become like us.
Yes. Oh, by the way, change slides.
Yep.
Correct. Now, other than that, this passage also insinuates that angels can desire and fall victim to lust, implying angels have or can feel some form of emotion. Another implantation, which may contradict several mainstream religious views, would seem to suggest that angels do somehow possess a gender, which I find kind of strange. And to look at that, next slide. Now, this is suggested by the term specifically sons of God, their lust for human women, and that they procreated with said women. Which, let's be honest, it would be kind of difficult. I mean, despite what some radical feminists like to
I was
think,
about to
you do
say,
still
are you
need men.
sure?
Yeah, no, despite what radical feminists like to think, you do still need men to procreate. So, to say that they lusted after women, to say that they married the daughters of man, does suggest that they have some form of gender, and they are also called the sons of God. Now, of course, the term is this is just a general term, like for children of God, like niños niños in Spanish can mean both boy and girl, right? But you see, here's the problem, and this is it. And finally, there's kind of a more obscure passage in the Bible hinting the possibility of angels' gender with what appears to be a description of two female angels. The passage in question being Zechariah 5:9. Now, Zechariah 5:9 says, "Then I looked up, and there before me were two women with the wind in her wings. They had wings like those of a stork." Now, some claim this is an image of symbolism that God will take away the wickedness of the land, which, yes, this is definitely a passage of symbolism, as angels are often used to deliver a symbolic message. However, the use of two female angels seems odd, as male figures would have worked just as well. Not to mention, this is the only section specifically denoting female celestial beings. And to put it simply, this concept of angelic gender is confusing to say the least, as the Bible and other sources are fairly adamant that angels are beings of spirit, of light, and energy. However you choose to interpret it, angels are, for the most part, not considered part of the biological sexual dimorphism of most mammals. And yet the Bible would suggest otherwise. So, what do these two seemingly contradictory claims suggest?
So I'm looking over that whole. I wasn't joking when I said I was gonna get a Bible. 'Cause,
Yeah, no, Zechariah 5:9.
no,
No, I put it in
I've
there
been looking
because
over that whole chapter because the whole thing is called "The Woman in a Basket." Is the name of
yeah,
that chapter. Well, it's Paul chapter 5. Because he's I'm assuming that Zachariah is the narrator in this. Sorry, it's been a very long time since I read the Bible, so
yeah, no worries.
I'm assuming Zachariah is the narrator, since I know most of the books of the Bible is generally the person who the book is named after who's narrating it.
Uh, Genuinely, yes. So the narration can be a bit funny, but yeah, generally, go ahead.
Because he's speaking to an angel who he definitively referred to as he.
Yes,
Um, and the woman with the basket is never directly called an angel. They just refer to it as a woman. So it seemed to be almost more of just a celestial being. At least
true.
this may be my version of the Bible. I think I have a
Well,
version.
yeah,
This is
but
a new
regardless,
international
whatever
version.
version you have, we still have these clearly female winged celestial beings.
Yeah, it's just they don't use they don't use angel when they describe when he turns to the angel, because I think the next line is he turns to he say, "Well, they take in the basket. I asked the angel who was speaking to me." He
Yeah.
replied, "To the country of Babylonia, to build a house for it."
Yes, and actually, this kind of vagueness is going to be looked at a little closer because it is very infuriating and actually will be explaining a lot of things like the Book of Enoch, which again we'll touch on a bit later on. So,
Huh. But they also
so
called the
yes, it is
basket
odd.
wicked. So, that's the other thing. I mean, this whole thing, I have not read
Yeah, no, I
Zechariah
mean,
in a long time, because this whole thing sounds almost like a vision or dreamlike thing, because it's
well, that's also the problem is that sometimes, like that's as part of their abilities, angels can be appear in dreams and show through symbolism in dreams.
then
So that doesn't help either.
yeah, just looking at this is verse chapter 5 verse 7. Then the cover of the lamp was raised, and there in the basket sat a woman. He said, "This is wickedness," and he pushed her back into the basket and pushed the lead covering down over its mouth. And okay, and so there's a woman in the basket too. So it's like there's too many women here. There's a woman in the basket. There's the two angelic women with the wings.
Yes. Wings of a stork, as I find kind of interesting,
Yeah.
which might be why so many angels have wings, and because
Hmm.
it's not completely clear that all angels have wings, but we'll look into that more later on.
What I find interesting is you said angels are directly translated as messengers.
Yes.
These two women didn't really deliver a message. They deliver a item. They seem more like delivery people.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's the differentiation why they didn't use angel to refer to them. Is because they wasn't delivering any messages. They were delivering a basket. Before
Well,
they
not
was
necessarily, because not all angels deliver messages either, which we're also going to see later on. Yet they're still referred to definitely as angels. But the only difference is they'll be referred to exclusively as he or him, or definitely masculine. This is the only occurrence of female angels or feminine celestial beings. And again, it seems strange, but possibly, like, what may this? I was asking what this may suggest. Possibly, and I admit this is probably a stretch, but possibly, what if this? Sorry, possibly the existence of, for a lack of a better term, spiritual gender. Perhaps what this implies is masculine and feminine biological to be I'm sorry. Sorry, let me try again. What this implies is that masculine and feminine may actually transcend the biological and can be infused within the spiritual itself, and therefore be part of the spirit. So perhaps male and female isn't just as far as flesh goes. Perhaps it's actually part of our very core, part of angels' very core. I mean, if we consider this for humans and the majority of mammals, there are clear noted differences between men and women, despite the claims of more progressive statements nowadays, which we're not going to go into because then we'll be here all day. Now, other than the obvious biological differences, there are differences of thought process, value, interest, and especially response. Of course, there are outliers such as overly effeminate men and masculine women, yet, even the outliers still possess traits that are more masculine and feminine. This was even shown in a very unfortunate experiment by a disgusting individual whose name I will not say because I don't believe he should have any recognition whatsoever. But basically, this doctor took a young boy who suffered a very unfortunate accident at his birth, and basically, he was brought up as a girl.
Oh yeah.
And the experiment was a failure despite this disgusting man's claims, and the boy retained his masculine interests. It was an incredibly sad story. The boy ended up killing himself, and again, this man is often celebrated by a very particular ideology, and I find the whole thing disgusting, which is why I won't name him. But those who have studied this know exactly who I'm talking about.
I think they
But
even did a version of this in Law and Order's SVU Special Victim Unit.
I could imagine this man was a pedophile, and I hope he's burning in hell. But the point is, what it suggests is that masculine and feminine, again, may transcend the flesh to be incorporated into the spirit itself. I mean, after all, even God himself is referred to as a he, in spite of most people agreeing or perhaps believing that God doesn't actually have a gender. Now, there is a chance that that thought comes from Genesis 1:26, where God created man in his image, which I admit I question the passage's exact meaning, as I feel it could basically mean that God is saying he has an image of man in his mind and assemble it together rather than, you know, God looks like men. But regardless, these passages suggest that beings of light and energy possess a consciousness that may be masculine or feminine. What do you guys think? There's no wrong answer. Like, feel free to
I
say
don't
anything.
know in this day and age where it sounds like we.
Look, I'm sorry, but we can pretend that. I know comic books love to do the whole gender swap thing, but it is actually an interesting question because, like, it does bring up if we were actually capable of gender swapping, because I know nowadays that's a whole thing. But that's the thing; they still retain masculine and feminine traits. Like even the people who will pretend to be the completely opposite gender, they may act like the other gender, but they still have traits that are undoubtedly connected to their original biology. So it is a question. It's an interesting premise of whether or not our masculinity or femininity is tied into our very souls or into the spirit. I mean, again, what do you guys think? Like, there's no wrong answers. It's just a thought process.
For the whole God created man in his own image, I've always wondered in that because you can that can have that's like one of the lines that I'm like that's probably have like a million different translation and that people took. I don't even know if you can say took out of context, took to mean different thing because you can take it to mean, so does that mean a representation of God is a bipedal being, of a humanoid shape? Is that referring to gender with God being of a more masculine? That would explain why man or male was the first one made and women came after the fact. that will also explain why the majority of all angels, other than the two we just mentioned, was always referred to as he rather than without a gender rather than um with a gender. That I mean that would make sense that because my understanding was also angels were made before mankind.
Yes.
And if the first man you make was a male, and the very second man you make was a female, that would imply that with angels you did the same, and the first angel you made was more than likely a male. And it seemed like women, if we're going off of the Bible, was made specifically as a response to a human male request for a companion, essentially.
True, but do bear in mind, though, that according to the Bible, while that was a specific request for humans, it wasn't for animals. God made male and female animals before he made the woman
Uh,
for man. So male and female was part, because it talks about things being fruitful, and there's even kind of male and female when it comes to some plants and trees versus pollination and everything else. So there is this concept of a male and female union even before woman was introduced to man. So it really becomes a question of, the angels were definitely created before, but were they all masculine? And, then the question is, since angels were not really are supposed to be beings eternal like God, why create female angels?
the other question is, when did he make angels? It doesn't directly say. Now that I think of it,
No, it does not.
it does give a day when he made the creatures, when he made the heavens, the earth, the light, the waters. It doesn't ever speak when he made. Would angels have been regarded as animals? Or would they be more
Generally,
ethereal and they be regarded as the light and the dark?
no. So okay, so this is where people get a little bit about the Bible wrong. Is that what the Bible is first and foremost is a history book. It is the history of the Jewish and Christian people. That's what it is first and foremost. It has God's laws in it, it has rules and everything else, but it is primarily a history, and it starts with the creation of the earth. It's our history as God's chosen people. And you see, this is actually one of the most irritating things about trying to figure out angels from the Bible is that because the Bible is specifically focused on the history of God's chosen people, it actually doesn't hold that much importance to angels themselves because angels are not humans, which is what the Bible is about. Which, yeah, that's frustrating as hell if you're trying to study angels. Which is why we have to piece together what little information we can, and why we have to ask this thing and actually wonder is if consciousness like is associated with gender. Like, let's take a hypothetical. Like, if we actually were suddenly placed in female bodies, would we actually act differently? Like, what I mean is that would our very beings be different regardless of a female anatomy?
Well, tough. Do we still have the memory of when we used to be the opposite gender?
Well, yeah, that's the question. Like, if we take away our memory, do we still have like certain impulses that make us masculine and feminine? Because that's the thing, and why I mentioned the disgusting experiment done on that poor boy is that he was raised as a girl, so he didn't have any memories from being a boy, yet his interests always went to masculine things. They tried to give him dolls, he went to toy cars. They tried to push him to ballet and dance, he went towards football and sports. So despite basically every bit of sociology and societal pressures outside trying to push him to this female portion, he still went towards the masculine, which he was in fact a boy. So even when they tried to circumvent basically what he really was, they couldn't. So that's why I think it's actually interesting to bring up, and why it may suggest that gender itself, whether or not we're male or female, might actually be tied in with consciousness or spirit. And because one of the reasons I also bring this up is that, angels, we mentioned this before, can shapeshift. So a lot of people said, well, angels don't have a gender, so they can be either man or woman, whatever they want. But maybe that's not true. Maybe they are a particular gender. Then again, maybe the male angels can disguise themselves as female angels. I don't know. Like, that's the thing. This is all speculation. So your speculation is just as good as mine. So speculate.
I mean,
Yeah, I know. I'm dropping heavy questions on you guys.
well, with spiritual gender, it's tough because for that one you're bringing up with the boy, if I recall correctly, he had accident at birth that caused him to lose his genitalia,
That's
and
correct.
well, it caused it to essentially be so horribly maimed that I think they made the parents had to make the difficult choice to just have it surgically removed. If memory
Uh,
serves,
no, so it was a
was it?
circumcision machine, and it actually burned off.
Oh, they just complete because I knew it was
Yeah.
during the time of circumcision, and they it was and something went wrong during that process. I thought it left him maimed to the point they decided to just go ahead and remove it. Was it
No, it was
was
removed.
it completely just removed during the whole
Yeah.
process? Okay, during the whole
Yeah,
process.
like that's why it's really like it's hard to blame the parents for that, because like, my God, if that happened, like what would you do?
Yeah,
Like,
no, that
that is
it
something. That's
was completely
absolutely
out of their
horrid.
control for that specific thing.
No, that's why I call this man a monster, because he was a monster.
Um, then, but see, that's the other thing because you could also argue that even though the boy lost his genitalia, his hormones were still playing a factor, even if on a limited capacity. Because it's not like he was getting a female dosage of estrogen.
True. Though you could also argue that the testosterone hadn't really kicked in yet either, and yet he was still like acting like a boy.
Yeah. Now, but see, then that also bring up the question: where do tomboy and tomgirls um, fit into this?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, that's kind of the definition. Is like, what bothers me is like, tomboys are not girls who want to be boys. They're just girls who tend to like things that boys typically like. But I've met many tomboys, and they're still very feminine. They're just into some masculine things.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if anything for that boy was being diagnosed. Yeah, it's tough because I didn't look over the full case study because it is a kind of
I wouldn't. It's a
yeah.
horribly sad story.
Yeah, no, I know the broad strokes of it, so that's why I've
Yeah.
never been interested in it.
Yeah,
Um,
well, you know more than most people.
yeah. Um,
But like
it
I said, I thought it was an interesting note and thought about, angels possibly having a gender, or gender being linked with spirits. Like, it's an interesting thought. I mean, Zed, you've been quiet over there. What do you think?
All I know is I'm a guy, and that's it. People can say what they want to say what they are.
That's the extent of your thought in it?
I mean, to an extent, because there are certain things I associate less with oh, gender interests. It's like how you said they pushed him towards I don't it was
Dolls and other crap.
yeah, and then like he still leaned more towards sports and other things. Well, that also depends on just personal preference of what people like.
True.
But I do still see the point of, yes, if you are born as one way and you feel that way, regardless of what people tell you, you will end up going that way.
Or perhaps the
Also, I
statement.
agree that the doctor sounds like a dick, and should
Yeah.
burn in hell.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No. Only very radical fools believe otherwise.
Well, if I recall, the thing
Yep.
about the doctor was it was very clear from his notes that he had more of trying to prove a point rather than just studying the situation as a unbiased, pair of eyes.
Yeah. No. Completely. He was
Yeah.
trying to prove himself right, like many doctors do.
And that was I remember that's what a lot of people hate about him is he was too concerned about proving himself right rather than either being completely unbiased and just looking at the situation for what it was and not influencing it, or trying not trying to help the patient.
Yeah. Yeah. No. He was an arrogant narcissist who only cared about proving himself right. Kind of like Freud. I'm
Well,
not a big fan of Freud either.
everything relate back to the parents with Freud.
Everything relates back to something with Freud. But yeah, it is interesting that perhaps we really are born in the bodies we're meant to have.
We just been canceled because of that statement.
Oh yeah. I mean, to be fair, this is a podcast on angels. You really think those people would watch this?
They took over my video game. They'll do anything.
Yeah, good point. Well, unfortunately, there's no source in any religion that's going to clear this up. So, in the end, it's just speculation.
I don't even
However, what's up?
I don't even think there's female angels in the Book of Enoch, which is like all about angels and stuff like that.
No, there are mentioned female angels in the Book of Enoch.
Is there a female angel? Okay. There
Yeah,
must be a few though.
there are a few.
Okay, I don't recall them. That's why I'm saying.
Yeah. But they are. Well, to be fair, have you ever actually tried to read the Book of Enoch?
I've glazed it.
Yeah, that's what most people do, which we will also touch upon later on. But, however, male or female is not the only recorded differences of angels. The Bible, along with other sources, profess that not all angels look alike, as well as strongly suggesting that their appearance may be directly correlated with their ranking in the angel hierarchy. Go ahead. Now, when discussing this hierarchy, it must be understood whether you are referring to the biblical canonized or uncanonized versions. When it comes to biblical canon, the Bible is actually frustratingly fairly vague. Passages suggest there is a ranking among the angels of the Lord, but it never offers any specifics on the said rankings. The popularized detailed celestial class categorization actually comes from non-canonized sources. Most famously, the Book of Enoch. Now, for this discussion, it is best to start with the more vague biblical canon, as it's going to help to explain the more detailed non-canon versions that will emerge later on, and kind of explains for those of you watching on YouTube, may recognize the 3 rings and the 9 circles of angels that have become popular when discussing the angel hierarchy, which I'm sorry is not part of the Bible. It is strictly in non-canonized versions. But it will be but by looking at the canonized versions and seeing some of these, we'll understand where this kind of comes from. Now, that being understood, what hints, because they are definitely hints, does the Bible give? Now, through passages such as Matthew 8:10, Psalms 34:7, Psalms 91:11, Daniel 12:1, and Hebrews 13, the Bible hints at a military-like class structure of angels, particularly when it mentions the army of angels. The Bible is very clear that the Most High has a great army. The passage, however, focuses on the vast number of the army rather than the overall structure. For instance, in Daniel 7:10, which reads, "A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him." Now, 10,000 by 10,000, you can get an exact number of this, but this is actually a very early way of saying vast or countless. Now, just logically speaking, any group that's that large, military or otherwise, by necessity would require some form of organization. Though the Bible holds little to no importance to this organizational structure. In fact, contrary to popular belief, only two angels are directly named, with a third actually disputed. Now, before we get into this and we start really looking at angels, we actually have time to show what the media and what modern day interpretations of angels see. And for that, I'm going to give it over to Zed so we can see how angels are represented, because later on, we're going to see just how ridiculous we really are when thinking about angels. So, Zed, I'm going to take it over to you. Shadow R Fox, you can change the slide, and Zed, show us what we've got.
Most modern angel representations I know of come from most modern, some would say older media, given how one of these things is. If you are familiar with the early 2000s, as I grew up, you probably grew up watching some shows, one such as involved certain characters in it portrayed similarly to angels, namely Angemon and Angewoman, as clearly shown in the center of the screen. Good placement.
Yep. By the way,
But
very
it's
inventive names.
Yes, very inventive. You can tell they were very creative. There are a couple other angelic Digimon you can ones. And you can very clearly tell how they were inspired. The wings out the back, the all in white. But some of the more recent one that may pop up is for example, some of the more popular things with the Persona and franchise of video games. There are angels you are able to use as your personas in that game. Namely, there are two on the screen. The one on the left that looks like it belongs in the BDS, or on the right, sorry, that looks like it belongs in the BDSM dungeon, is just called Angel. Very creative.
I'm glad you mentioned the BDSM
I'm not
thing.
sure why it's blindfolded, and I'm not sure why it's wearing that, but that's just how it was depicted.
Wings are pretty
But the
close
one
to
on the left,
That's
the
true.
wings is very close to storks. The one on the left is known as Archangel. It's just called Archangel,
Nice.
which is funny because the Archangels are actually separate personas, but more of a warrior type, as you can see there. I'm sure there are many others. One of the more popular other pop culture ones I can think of is the show Lucifer, depicts several of the angels taking human forms, which was interesting to see.
That's the one with
Uh,
where he's a nightclub owner, right?
yes, he is a nightclub owner because he got tired of hell, so he went to California for a vacation and never went home.
Fun show, though I will admit it kind of got derailed after season 3.
Yes, though to be fair, season 3 is where they went through a network change.
Yeah, and it just like it went a little nonsensical after that.
After
I mean,
that.
to be fair, it never had that
Yeah,
much sense
anyway,
to
but
begin with, but
no, but as you can see, most pop culture references to angels are about the same. Even in Lucifer, they had the sets of wings. Now, the way that it was differentiated was they had various colors. For example, Lucifer's were pure white, Michael's was dark, Amenadiel's was a bit of a color. But no matter where you see it in pop culture, it's always kind of depicted the same way. The angelic wings number can kind of vary. I just noticed for some reason the Angel Woman has 8 wings instead of 6.
Well, C is a ultimate level Digimon, with Angel Mon is a champion level, so C is one tier higher than him. And
I
if I
guess that makes sense. I guess that makes sense.
and if I recall, the
I think
biblically accurate version of angels generally have more wings.
We'll
I
get
think,
into that.
yeah, we'll get into that. Well, I'm
yeah.
noticing for the
I'm not
alt
sure if the blonde hair is significant of anything, but
The what?
the blonde hair.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was just pointing them out because they're both blondes.
No, that's
Probably.
more of a Japan thing. Japan loves blondes.
I think personally, I think that's more of
Yeah.
a Norse thing with the Valkyries,
Oh, that could be it too.
because
That's
Valkyries are
yeah, that's
often
true.
associated with angels, because they do carry somewhat of a similar role of essentially ferrying the dead to essentially a place of honor, which Judeo Christian, heaven, Viking, Valhalla type stuff.
That's true.
Um, I noticed with the Archangel, his garb, isn't that argument you may have been able, that looked like some of the letters from the Book of Enoch for the angel's writings or whatever.
Oh, Enochian?
Mm-hmm.
Little bit. It was probably based off it.
It looked like two Enochians fused together. Two Enochian letters fused together almost.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know a lot about Enochian symbols, mostly because the majority of it is complete nonsense.
I don't have it in front of me right now because I actually do
Yeah.
have the full dictionary for it.
There's a dictionary.
Well, not dictionary, the full alphabet.
There's an alphabet? Of
Yeah,
course there's an alphabet. What am I saying?
that's why I had said I did skim it, because that's now you actually got me curious enough to go pulling it up on my own. Do I still have it? Oh, here we go. Oh, it was called a dictionary, the whole Enochian dictionary.
Nice.
I knew I had. I was trying to do this for a side project. Side project of just looking up Angel's writings, and I was trying to write a story, and I was trying to come up with a magic symbols, and I figured the Enochian language would be the best thing, just because nobody knows of it, so I could do what I want with it.
Fair enough. On a side note, you were trying to come up with magic symbols and you didn't ask me for help?
Well, this was on.
I love making symbols.
I think. Well, I've been doing this for years. This was before I even knew you.
Oh, still, it's me. I love making symbols.
And then I got sidetracked, so I never really picked it back up. But I always kept all the stuff.
Fair enough, but symbols, come on, me. How many symbols have I made?
6T. Hang on. Now I'm curious, because I think this actually is.
Like, heck, I've even made symbols and things for you guys.
Nah, thanks for the logo that everyone's currently seeing. It's not a number. It's
I'm sorry.
definitely-
What
No,
are you
sorry.
talking about?
I'm still looking at the
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. Like that's actually what kind of bugged me when I was looking into the witch community. Like I was talking to someone who was selling T-shirts with magic ruins on them, and I literally asked her like what religion or what script she got that from, because I didn't recognize the language, and she said, "Oh no, I just made them up." Like what? Like, yeah, of course. What matters is the power they symbolize to me, and that I can manifest them into those symbols. Like, so they're just your scribbles, essentially. I didn't say that part out loud because I'm pretty sure she didn't appreciate it, but I would have said that.
Possibly. I think I actually. It really does look like a symbol. The problem is, it looked like two symbols stacked on top of each other, and that's what's throwing me off.
I mean, it probably is. Like, then again, it could also just be a 6 and an upside down sword.
And that's the problem. It looked like something. The something. I just trying to figure out what the upside sword mean, because it could be the fire or the. I'll show you guys this when we stop for the recording and let you look at the full dictionary, because yeah, it's it
Which
does look.
actually, good timing because we have reached our hour mark, and this is actually perfect. So we have now a look at what angels are represented or what they look like in modern media. So next time we're going to take a look at how angels are described in the Bible. Now we're going to start with the angels that are actually named. So please join us next time when we start episode 2, where we'll be starting with arguably the most famous of all angels, the Archangel Michael. Should definitely be interesting, and we're going to get into the craziness of angels. And Zed, you're going to have more fun trying to find angels or counterparts from media that match biblically accurate angels. Looking forward to it.
I'll find something.
I'm going to say
I'll find
I'm going
something.
to say Neon Genesis Ever Angel Land will probably be your safest bet when you get stuck.
Probably.
Most of the angels from there are biblically accurate in how creepy they look
That
in
is
description.
yeah, that's probably true.
That works out. Okay, and with that, I hope you enjoyed our first edition of our deep dive into basically angelology. Once again, these are your hosts, Archimage,
Shadow or Fox.
And Zed,
and we will hopefully see you again later.
See ya.